Welcome to Everyday Spirituality, a podcast by Connect.Faith. You're listening to a podcast in our Young Leaders series, where we'll hear from young activists who decided to take action in their communities following the death of George Floyd. In this series, you'll hear how and why these young leaders got involved in combating racial injustice. My name is Cali Bronkema, and in the first episode of this series, I talked to Humza Mumtaz and Milton Esliker. These two activists from Pleasantville, New York, told us about what inspired them to reach out to their town leaders and start working for change. If you hadn't had a chance to listen to the first part of their story, I recommend doing so before listening to this podcast. Now, we'll continue hearing more about the work that they did.
I feel like a lot of people in the beginning assumed that I was doing this because I hated Pleasantville and I don't like the people in Pleasantville. That's kind of what I got back from a lot of people. But, my reality is that I wouldn't be doing this if I hated Pleasantville. I love my community. I love the people in it. My community has supported me in times of need, and my family and me, we've done the same. And so that's why I reached out to my community, because I knew I could find the help that we needed to get this ball rolling.
We're in an area where we're so blessed with so much opportunity and resources. And many of the adults that we've grown up with have so many expertise and so many great resources at their disposal. So it did make sense to go to the people that we knew to try to learn what we could get done. And I think a lot of it was a learning experience as well.
You mentioned some of the projects that you did and these conversations that you had. Would you mind telling us about some of those conversations or about some of the things that you pushed for and you're able to get accomplished, or things that kind of didn't end up working out?
I think we could start off with the first meeting with the administration, high school administration, and the district administration. In that meeting, one of the things that we were very adamant about was the fact that the books and the history that we learn needs to evolve and needs to change, because the stuff that we learn in high school is very whitewashed, and it's a very censored tale of America and the world. And the books that we read are all pretty much Eurocentric. And any other books that aren't Eurocentric are usually tales of pain, struggle, or some sort of negative aspect of that race's life. And so that was one thing we realized needed to change first. And in that meeting, it was actually really delightful to hear that Mr. Palumbo had already been working on a lot of this stuff already before a lot of this activism and Black Lives Matter movement really took hold. We were also discussing, various ideas of how to teach the teachers as well. We agreed on 2 books for them to read. He ordered them, and I'm pretty sure they all read them over the summer.
How to Be Anti-Racist and White Fragility, I believe.
Yes. And so that was just one of the aspects of that meeting that we thought was really good, and what we thought we got a lot of headway in. Even in the social studies department, the words that we use to describe people of color throughout history versus the words that we use to describe Eurocentric people is very different. When you think of, for example, the Mongol army or the Huns, they were described as barbarians when they were just conquerors like the Roman army was. But the Roman armies aren't described as barbarians primarily, no. But it was just that realization that, wow, so much of what I was taught is so vastly skewed towards one type of person.
Yeah.
Because I think we were just like that. That's what came to mind. It's like, what do we need to change? It's like, how do I feel, and how do the people around me feel? How do the people of color around me feel? So we kind of, we took time speaking to some of our, friends, people of color, and even through social media, just got like kind of ideas, kind of like crowdsourced for ideas, and tried to get a diverse range of ideas.
Are there any other conversations or projects that you guys went ahead with that you want to talk about?
We were talking to the police chief of Pleasantville and of Yonkers a little bit over the summer, discussing ideas for police reform, what may need to change, what does need to change, what their experience in the police department, in the respective police departments are like. And I learned a lot. I didn't know too much about the police system in this country, at least in that aspect and to that depth. But in that meeting, we were doing the learning,
Yeah, we learned a lot.
We did learn a lot. The Yonkers police chief really took over that meeting, and he really taught us, because at least in respect for police, there's one thing that I began to notice is that, and one thing he said, there are bad police departments. Bad police departments was not a widespread thing. And that made me think, because knowing him, he's done a lot for his police department. And he really reformed it. And yet there were people in towns like Pleasantville who were spitting on him, talking bad about him, and people who were speaking ill about him because he was a police officer, not knowing the things that he's done for his police department in his town. But it was a very interesting conversation, and Humza knows a little bit more about the project that he was working on, that he's trying to get our police department involved in. So Humza, you can take over.
Yeah, I think what's important to keep in mind about police reform is, especially in the research that I've done since, and the police chiefs that we've spoken to, is police reform is most effective and most easily done at the agency level, at the departmental level, as opposed to on the state or the county or the national level. So yeah, I don't know if I can speak too much on the specifics of it. I don't know if that would compromise it or whatnot, but yeah. Yeah, basically we're trying to push for some sort of comprehensive reform that that would be at a departmental level, that perhaps could be an example for other departments and other agencies across the nation to maybe learn from.
Yeah. So it all comes back to what we talked about at the beginning, focusing on local, right? And focusing on kind of one community at a time when you can. If someone right now is listening to this and thinking like, oh my gosh, there's so much tangible change that I could go out and suggest to my school board, to my police board, to, the head of sports at our school district, what would you say to them?
Do it. There's nothing stopping you. And it doesn't matter what you do, just as long as you have a goal and you have the drive. Because throughout this entire journey that we took over the summer, I'll tell you right now, I didn't know what my next step was going to be. I just kind of acted on impulse and what I knew needed to get done. You know what I mean? Like Humza said, it was at many times very unstructured. And but at the end of the day, whether structured or not, the fact that you're getting people talking, the fact that you're getting your ideas out there, that's all that matters. Because once your ideas are out there, they're there for people to take and do whatever with them.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's no better time to start than now, definitely. Get into it. And it starts with education, like I keep saying. It starts with self-reflection. And it's important to keep in mind the bigger picture, I think, as well, like what you where you want to take your reform or activist work in the future. Like what do you need to, especially if you're young, you got to ask yourself sometimes, like, what do you need? What tools what skills do you need to go forth and then change, cause real change? So whether that means you need an education, whether that means you need more context to learn from, whether that means you need to just take care of yourself for a second, you know what I mean? So but it definitely starts with self-reflection, education, and yeah, just like Milton said, to go for it. There's no time to waste. Do it.
So what would you say is your hope?
For me, I don't necessarily have a specific goal. Like I don't have. I can't say that I want to have a bill written up and passed by 2030. I can't say that, but what I can say, what I want from all of this, is just a conversation. That's it. Because all it takes is one conversation, one influx of new ideas to start a domino effect, and next thing you know it, you're a changed person. That's all I want. That's all I want, is to start a conversation with people so people can start thinking about new things and looking at things differently, from a different perspective, from a different set of shoes. That's all I want.
In looking to have more of these conversations, what's next for y'all? What's your next step?
So over this summer, we've been working hand in hand with a local organization, Films on Purpose, in trying to get a screening of a documentary for the people of Pleasantville, and not only that, just anyone who wants to join the Zoom. The documentary is Black, White, and Us. It's about 4 white families in Utah who go on a journey of self-realization and discovery about racism and how it really affects Black people through transracial adoption. It's a really interesting and unique look at racism in America and the way white people deal with it or not deal with it.
Yeah, Cali, it really is a fantastic documentary. I remember when we first sat down with Films on Purpose, Milton and I, mostly Milton, was going through film after film, watching tons of films, like looking like what's the right film for our audience, what's the right film for Pleasantville, in and around Pleasantville. And we were finding a lot of the usual stuff, a lot of the usual takes on racism, kind of fetishizing Black pain, a lot of black and white footage of riots, of segregation and stuff. A lot of stuff that's really distant from what you see in Pleasantville. So we kind of came to the conclusion that we needed a screen of film that kind of spoke to what was around us, spoke to what was around the audience, and that's why Black, White, and Us is so relevant, because it kind of it is that that journey of self-realization, and it kind of, it really, I think it's so effective. Definitely join us. I think it's so effective in kind of showing how, because a lot of white people, they kind of look at these photographs, Black and white photographs of segregation, and they think like, oh yeah, that's racism, but then they don't think it's racism when they think the only Black kid in class should be a basketball player. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. More stuff like that happens in towns like this. So that's why this film draws attention to that, and it kind of uses Utah as this microcosm to study America through. And it's going to be on October 28th is the discussion at 8 p.m. And the filmmaker Loki Mulholland will be joining us, who's we met him yesterday, actually. He's a great guy, really smart guy, and I think we'll get into a really nice discussion about the film, and I really think you should watch it on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, I love that you guys took the time to find something that people from small, mostly white towns can kind of relate to, because I feel like a lot of the language is, we see such huge tragic events and people think like, oh, well, that's not our town. Like that wouldn't happen here. Exactly. So I think that'll be really, really awesome. So just to summarize that, the goal is to watch the movie before this discussion, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we all join on Zoom October 28th, 8 p.m. to talk with you two and the filmmaker. Is there anything else that you guys want me to ask you about, or just want to comment on in general?
I think a lot of like common themes come throughout all the questions you kind of asked us, and all the kind of work we did, is that it starts from like being honest with yourself and like self-reflection. So even if you don't think you're racist, even if you're a person of color and you don't think you're racist, you think about yourself. You know what I mean? Sit down and really think about yourself. Think about what you've done. Think about how you felt. Think about the way you made people feel. Think about the way you think. You know what I mean? And then read, and then educate yourself, and then you can educate other people. I think that's the most important lesson, I think, in this battle against racism.
It's important to remember that, you know, to not be scared. Don't be scared to reach out. Don't be scared to speak, because no one is here to judge, because it's all a learning process. You know, I feel sometimes people are scared to speak to me, or they're scared to approach me. And just speak. Let's have a discussion, because this is all going to get solved with discussion and two-way communication. And so as long as conversations are being had, ideas are being exchanged, and people are actually listening to each other, not just hearing and shouting back at one another, that's when we can affect real change.
Yeah. I love that idea of so many people are too scared to talk and say something wrong, but you have to be willing to be called out for saying something wrong, and then think about, where did that thought come from? Where did that statement come from? And really do the work on yourself. All right. Thank you guys so much. I have to do my little outro. So
thank you, Cali. Appreciate it.
This has been Everyday Spirituality, a podcast with Connect.Faith. Thank you all for listening and joining.
Awesome. Thanks, Cali.